crazy, baby, bro. Like I watched Married with Children. In my mind, I still see it like, hey, there's nothing wrong with it. Like it's caught up with the times. I mean, just like the footage and the picture of it. It's the best taco. I think you said you had a fish taco, shrimp taco, and I forgot you had like 3 tacos.
Yeah, I had 3 little tacos. It was two.
All right, what's up, familia? Welcome inside the pad. Hope you guys are doing good. Keeping it between the lines. Got your load secure. If you guys don't know, I always like to remind everybody that once a month we're doing something on Chicano history. I'm really enjoying it because it's a bunch of stuff that I don't know. Nonetheless, I've never even really heard of most of it. And here to help me do that is Chicano high school teacher one, a good friend of mine, Mr. Robert Anthony.
How's everybody doing out there? Ed, good to see you, man.
Hey, good to see you. How you doing, sir?
Everything's great, man. Everything's great. Just like I told you the other day, man. Looking forward to this weekend. Looking a really good fight coming on, so I'm excited about that. Hoping my guy makes a good showing. So
okay. You know, lot of rumors about your Oakland Athletics as well. I heard that stadium is they're going to be building their ballpark out in Vegas now. I heard a lot. We'll talk more on that, man.
Yeah,
but
it's heartbreaking.
Do you take your work home with you, or are you at school right now? Because I see the whiteboard back there.
I am actually at school right now. You know, it was one of those days where we have with students like office hours. You know what I mean? Kind of like we try to get them in the mode for like college. You know, because at college, if you miss something, you can always go to your professor and he'll have office hours. So we try to model that where if you're falling behind, we want you to be proactive and, hey, can I go to your office hours? I'm not getting something. I'm not grasping something. So I have office hours on certain days, and today was my day. And I had some students come in who needed a little bit of work. You know, I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm trying to incorporate some. You know, when we talk about Chicano history, that's awesome. But I think another big part of what I do is not just teaching you the beauty and the respect of your culture, but to have respect for other people's culture as well. So I'm doing like a unit on the Native Americans, which has been pretty interesting. And we're dealing with, you know, like the Trail of Tears, you know, Indian boarding schools, the Navajo code talkers, you know, a lot of things, again, that a lot of people are unaware of. But like Chicano history, they're great stories. There's a lot of great context, content in that. And I like to do it because it gets me out of not a rut, but, you know, just something a little bit different for myself as well. You know, I get to get educated on somebody else's culture as well. And I like I said, in order to have true respect, you know, we want people to respect our culture, and we got to have respect for our culture. I think a big part is we got to learn how to respect other people's cultures as well.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Well, one of the pieces of history, and again, I'm almost like a little embarrassed, man. Like I've told you that I don't even know. Not the fact that I don't know any of this stuff, but some of the stuff I've never even heard of. One of those things, I had no idea who Ruben Salazar was. The Chicano Moratorium, I remember being a kid and somebody mentioning that. I remember hearing that, but I never paid attention to it. To me, you know, it could have been anything. I had no knowledge. I just remember hearing somebody say Chicano Moratorium, and they were talking. I didn't put any interest. Anybody could have told me, you know, it's a I don't know, it's a house or somebody who came together or something. I had zero interest. I knew nothing about it. And man, looking into it, wow. I mean, what a piece of history, man, especially when you talk about when things go wrong, when protests go wrong, and
Right.
you know, it turns out to be, you know, pretty much like a riot and all. So Robert, let's go ahead and get into it. And before we do that, as always, to anybody who's watching, no, we do not know everything. I got my good friend here, Robert. He teaches Chicano history at high school, but we do not know everything. We could get some stuff wrong. We're learning as well. So, and we push zero agenda. We're just putting information
Right, right.
out there.
Thank you for saying that, because I know sometimes people think that I'm a teacher, that I should know everything, and I
Mm,
try to know as much as I can, because it is my job, and it's something that always fascinated me prior to my job, right? But there's times I say something wrong or get it wrong, and just like I said, I'm not trying to. If there's anybody who ever wants to go ahead and check it or check me or say, hey, that was wrong information, I'm always willing to learn. I don't take it personally. You know what I mean? And one last thing I wanted to comment on is, it's funny that Ed says he's a little embarrassed that he's never heard this or never talked about that. I talk to a lot of people who haven't heard about this stuff. And it's not, you shouldn't feel embarrassed, because this is something you were never taught.
right.
Now if you were taught this in school, and you were taught this here, and you were taught that there, and then you would say, like, oh, you know what, Robert, I really don't know my times tables. Why not?
Right, right. But see, when we're looking at footage like this, right? That this happened. I mean, when you talk about like the Watts riots, everything that happened with Rodney King and everything, you hear a lot about that, right? That doesn't go unnoticed. But when we see footage that we're about to look at right now, and sorry, I can't put the sound on because then YouTube will kick us off. But um, I mean, there was explosions going on. It was the cops going at we'll get to the details in just a second, but seeing footage like this, where footage like this does exist, if you go look for it, it's like, well, wait a second. You don't have to look at pictures. There's actually video. There's actually footage that you can find of just so much destruction that happened, so much madness that happened. And look, people did die. And you could see cops just, beating people down, man. And to just never hear about this is perplexing to me.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, you see this footage, it's just like, wow, and there's so much more of just so much. And there's Ruben Salazar right there. And we'll get to him in just a second. Let me go ahead and take that down. But
Those
um,
images are amazing. Just
yeah,
to see
and
that is amazing.
there's so much of it, yet I've never heard of it.
And
And I'm from that part of Los Angeles.
yeah, it's interesting to me, especially when because Los Angeles has so much rich history when it comes to the Chicanos and Mexican Americans, and just to me, it's almost like the Mecca. LA, it's always, it grew and it grew and it grew, and next thing you turn around, and like we talked about before, there's certain places in LA where if you don't speak Spanish, you're at a disadvantage.
Mm. Yeah, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the community, right? Where I think people never realize that. And when you talk about like the Rodney King or the Watts riots, it's always fascinated me that whenever we talk about race in America or the ills of racism in America, there's only two things we talk about: black and white.
Right. Correct.
Right? Where it's like we're almost forgotten, where we're in the mix as well, but it's like almost like we've forgotten, like, our story. Like, our story's not told as much, right? And if you take a look at the beatings and the riots and the things that have just happened, it's just always fascinated me that we're not on par with our with our African American brothers and sisters, who, when something happens in the community, you better believe everybody especially today, everybody in the nation is going to know about it.
Right.
When it comes to Mexican Americans and Latinos in general, I don't think we get the same type of, publicity, or we're not on CNN, or we're not talking about racism, we're not talking about this or that. It's not equated equally to me, right?
I,
And people got to realize that, we're not white, we're not black, we're kind of like we're stuck in the middle.
mm,
You know, it's when are you going to tell our stories? When are you going to people in LA, man, producers, directors, when are you going to tell our stories?
oh man,
They're out there.
I think we're getting there, man. Seriously, I see a
I
lot of
hope
great
so.
things. It's actually pretty exciting. It really
I
is.
hope so.
But so let's go ahead and get to some of the details what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Chicano moratorium, along with Ruben Salazar, because he's a big part in what happened in all this. So in the year of 1970, August 28th, 1970, there was a big march, a big protest. I Okay, so there was two different things that I got. I heard over 20,000, and then on another one I heard 30,000. So for anybody, whatever the number is, the number is. Marched 3 miles in East Los Angeles at Laguna Park, which is now known as Salazar Park. I know where that park is at. I know exactly where that's, Indiana and Whittier Boulevard. Yet I didn't know who Ruben Salazar was. Again, man, kind of embarrassed. But um, so they had a protest. Now, what was the protest about? It was about the Vietnam War and the dead bodies that were coming back, and the ratio was not fitting. The percentage was not fitting. They were going ahead and taking. Remember, the Vietnam was complete, chaos. That's when they had the draft. Uh, it's not that they drafted a bunch of Chicanos, but some were drafted, some volunteered as well. A lot from the Southwest. Everywhere that I'm reading, I'm seeing Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, California. A lot of them were coming back, you know, dead in coffins, man. They were being put in the front lines. The percentage wise, I think I lost it here, but the percentage was greater than anybody else when you talk about the number of Chicanos that were fighting in the war. The number was greater percentage wise. The number was greater. Yes, you can find where maybe more whites were killed, but percentage is what I'm talking about. They were coming back at a much higher rate percentage wise, and that's when the Chicanos, started bonding together along with the Brown Berets, who had formed about 5 years before that,
Good
saying
point.
like, yeah, and they're like, hey, wait a second, man, you know what? Our young men are going over there and they're dying, and they're like, percentage wise, it's not making sense. It's not making sense. You have so many. You had what, 58,000 that died, and I think it was like 10,000. When you combine that with the percentage of Chicanos that were fighting out there, it just did not make sense for so many to be coming back, and coming back really fast. And the average age in World War II, the average age was actually 26 years old, where in the Vietnam War, the average age was actually 21 years old. That was the average age. So you go back to World War II, the average age was getting closer to 30 years old. You go to Vietnam War, the average age was 21 years old. So these were really young guys, man, that were going out there and coming back in coffins. So they set up out there to protest, and things took a little bit of turn for the worse. But Robert, your thoughts with the protest, why they were protesting, the Vietnam War, the percentage that was so, I mean, the
Right.
percentages just didn't match up. I mean, would you have seen something wrong with it? Just talk to us a little bit.
You hit all of the key points right now. Um, Disproportionate rates. Mexican Americans were dying in disproportionate rates. Um, Also, it's we always talk about this, but you mentioned something that we've spoken about before, which is very interesting. And you said, and this just shows you how times change, right? We talked about, where were these recruits coming from? We said Texas, right? We said Arizona. We said Colorado. We said California. And then you said the Southwest. Well, we got to remember, in 1970, the Southwest, That's what Chicanos were. That's what
Correct.
Mexican Americans were. It
Yeah.
wasn't like today,
Right.
where you got Mexicans in Tennessee, you got Mexicans in Georgia, you got Mexicans in New York. So it was. Remember, I spoke one time. I don't know if you remember me saying like your Spanish speakers were very regional, right? If you were speaking Spanish to somebody on the East Coast back in the 60s and 70s, most likely they were Puerto Rican because
Right.
it was regional, right? So if that were to happen today, there'd be Mexican Americans from all over the country because the numbers have just grew in such fast amounts, right? So it's interesting. I just always find that amazing that little pocket of the Southwest had a concentration of so many men volunteering. Because people forget, man. Again, Mexican Americans, Chicanos are very patriotic. Some people don't. Some people don't believe that Mexican Americans are patriotic. They're patriotic as anybody else, right? And it's almost like we always have to prove our patriotism. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
our Americanism, so to speak. We always got to prove it, and we don't. It's like we're just as American as anybody else, right? But that goes to a whole nother conversation that I don't want to get to because there's people who don't believe that Mexicans should even join the army. Right? I've heard people say stuff
Right.
like that
Yeah.
before. Like, why would you join the white man's army? I've heard people say things like that before. So I don't want to get off on that tangent. I'm going to try and keep on point. But
No, but
another,
that's why I wanted. I don't mean to cut you off, but that's why I wanted to be specific when I said yes. Some were drafted, but many, volunteered to get into the army. It's just the positions that they were put in.
people forget
Yeah,
about that, and they're always front line. It always seemed like they were front lines. Another interesting thing is the age. I've heard everything from 19 to you said what 20, 21?
the average age for the Vietnam War was 21 years old. That was
Right.
the average age. Where the biggest war before that, or World War II, the average age was 26.
Right. See, and I've heard everything between 19
Mhm.
was your average age to 21 to 23.
Okay.
Right. So the numbers. I don't know if you remember. There was even a song back in the day that was actually called 19, and it was a
Oh,
song. It was a song about Vietnam. If you ever get a chance, it was like during the late 80s, 90s, and this guy made a song called 19, and it was talking about the average soldier in Vietnam was 19. Right.
okay.
But like I said, man, you hit all the points, man. The Vietnam War, we got to remember also, was a war that was very well supported by Americans, right? Until young men started coming back to the neighborhood with a missing arm. Young men started coming back with no limbs. Young men stopped coming back. That people started thinking to themselves, we're going 10,000 miles away to liberate this country. And a lot of Mexicans, Americans, and African Americans as well. I don't want to forget them. They felt like we're liberating them. We're not liberated in our country.
Right.
We're fighting for these people's rights. And a lot of Mexican Americans and African Americans felt like we don't have rights.
Right. People need to remember it was a different time. This was the late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, it was a different
It
time.
was a different time, man. And the one thing that I really try to tell young people, anybody who hasn't heard about this is that we cannot even imagine that time period. Everything was happening. You had the Chicano movement going on. You had the African American movement going on. You had the Indian American movement going on. You had women's rights going on. You had the peace movement going on. You had a war in Vietnam going on. You just had so many things going on, man. And it's just like I said, it amazes me that we got through all that. It really does, man. And I know that's a segue, but it just amazes me. But like you said, you hit all the points, man. We were coming back in disproportionate rates. We were coming back. Guys were on the front line. We were coming back. A lot of Chicanos were coming back, and I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but the men who came back from Vietnam, they didn't come back like the World War II guys. Nobody was clapping for them.
Right.
They were
Right.
despised.
Yes.
They were despised. They were called baby killers. They would be in a march and people would spit on them. You know what I mean? And it's just so many things that happen where the community, along with like you said, the Brown Berets, that was a good point you made. Decided, you know what, we got to protest about this. It's not right what's happening. Our youth, and we got to understand, it wasn't like the Chicanos were saying like our youth are dying. Why aren't your youth dying? We understood that everybody's youth were dying, but we
Right.
want to know why were ours dying at a disproportionate rate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
Especially
and you know what? I wonder that. I was not able to see anywhere, find anywhere whether it was just lack of training, or they just throw you out to the front lines.
right,
That's either way. In a disproportional rate, Chicanos were dying off. The percentage just did not match up. So it's going to be one or the other. And again, just like you touched, it was a different time back then. Don't try to make sense of it with the way things are today. It was definitely much different. um, Back then. It was a lot more in your face type of racism
right.
that they were going to go ahead and implement, and say like, hey, you go over there and you guys hit the front line, or what, how much training do they have? That's cool, man, send them off, or whatever it may be. I could easily see that happening at that time for sure. So from what I understand, there was actually a march of 1,000 people in 1969, and it was peaceful. It went all good. It went all right. 1 year later, fast forward to 1970, August 29th of 1970, that is when everybody got together, and it was like, no, there's something definitely wrong here, especially with the draft going on. You guys, you were able to see people did not want to go. They were kicking and screaming. They took them, sending off to war, and they protest this. Now, here's where things get all choppy. Okay. Why did it get out of hand? Why did the sheriff start beating down people? And by the way, the people did fight back. People were fighting back. 75 sheriffs were injured in this huge melee. Um, Here's the thing, Robert, and it's kind of on thin ice on what is true, what is not. But apparently, you had a couple of vatos, right, during the protest. You had a couple of dudes going inside a liquor store and taking beer, doing beer runs.
Yeah, I've heard that
I
before.
mean, that I don't know if that still happens today. When I was young and dumb, I mean, you just go inside a liquor store, grab beer, and go running out, and so there were a couple of dudes. Yeah, so there were a couple of guys getting beer, doing that kind of stuff. And look, unfortunately, it takes a few to mess it up.
Right.
And that sucks, man, because they're out there for a message. They're out there to save the youth, of like, hey, we don't want our 18, 19, 20, 21 year old young men going out there, and you're not even taking care of them. You're not even treating them. You're treating them as expendable, and they're not. You got to treat them like the rest of the soldiers and look out for their best well-being. You don't send them out there to go stand on a landmine. Let me pull this back up. All right, so I don't know if we lost Robert or not, but if we did, that's cool. You there, Robert?
You got me?
Yeah,
You
I
hear
got
me?
you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't know
Um,
if it's my end or your end. Okay.
we got you now. So, it's like, don't use our guys to go out there and start testing landmines, to see if there's a landmine field out there. You treat them just like any other soldier. So, I guess the sheriffs were called, and from that, they were called because a couple of guys were doing beer runs, and what had happened is that pretty much sparked off everything. There, they get a little aggressive with looking for the guys, or getting the guys that are doing beer runs out there, and everything just turns into one big old melee, and all hell breaks loose, man. And some of that footage is really crazy. Let's see. I think we lost Robert, but let's see what we could pull up here. We were showing this just a little earlier, but there's so much footage that you guys can find. There's actual video that you guys can find where the sheriffs and the Chicanos, man, they're really going at it with one another. And the Chicanos did fight back. Like I said earlier, it was estimated that 75 sheriffs were injured. Some of them were injured pretty badly. So it was definitely, it definitely turned into some big old melee, man. A lot of chaos, burning buildings. I mean, look at this. It looks crazy, man. Just damn, what a time in history that is really kept under covers, man. That's the part that kind of bothers me a little bit, is the fact that all this is just kept under wraps, is never taught anywhere unless you yourself go out and seek it. Now, there's Ruben Salazar, and that's who I want to get to right now because he's a big part of this. Robert, what's up, my man?
There we go. There we go.
Okay, so we got
but that is crazy footage.
Yeah, and there's
First
so
time I
much.
saw that, I was taken aback, man.
Yeah, there's so much more of it. So, but I do want to let's get to Ruben Salazar and why does he fit into all this? Because there's a conspiracy and there's a case that was never solved. Ruben Salazar was born on March 3rd, 1928 in Mexico, in Juarez. But I believe it was the same year that they moved to El Paso, Chasachuco town, and that's where he was raised. And he actually served, Robert. He actually served 2 years in the United States Army, and he was always into activist stuff, prisons and all that stuff. He went to San Francisco. He rode over there, made his way to Los Angeles, and was writing for the LA Times as well. I mean, he's kind of an interesting guy. Let me go ahead and just read this right here real quick. Salazar was a two-time winner of the Greater Los Angeles Press Club Award, and in 1965 was presented with the award from the Equal Opportunity Foundation. Yeah, he was quite the character, man. In 1971, Salazar was awarded a special Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award. However, that is in 1971. Ruben Salazar was not with us in 1971 anymore. Robert, can you talk to us a little bit about what happened to Ruben Salazar?
I can, but I just want to talk real quick about what you were saying about him being an interesting character. Ruben Salazar, from things that I've read and things that I've seen on him, he was like a bridge. He was an older guy. The Chicano movement, Chicanos were a younger, right? There were older Chicanos, but Chicanos was a younger person's movement, so to speak, right? People were finding their identity. And Ruben Salazar was a very trusted voice in the Mexican American community and the Spanish speaking community as well. He was like he was the guy who would come into your living room every day on the news. So he was very well respected from everybody. Oh, if you were Spanish speaking, you knew who Ruben Salazar was, right? It's not like, again, not like today where there's a bunch of different types of minorities on TV. The news was predominantly done by white people.
Right.
Every once in a while, you'd have an African American. In LA, they started having to have Spanish speaking people because things were going on in the neighborhoods. But Ruben Salazar was like a bridge between the Chicano and the Mexican community in a way, because he kind of, I don't want to say sympathized with their plight, but he understood things are changing. We're changing. And because of that, I think some parents who might have been, remember the word Chicano, and being Chicano wasn't always like, all right. Some people were like, Chicano, that was, what? Chicano, he kind of bridged that where the parents kind of understood, like, okay, we're going in a different direction, right? It's not a bad direction. It's just a different direction, right? And like I said, the Chicano Moratorium along with some other events like the walkouts, and things of that nature. Those remind me of the things where the community finally said, you know what, it's our time to make our stand. We're not our parents. We're not gonna. It's not gonna be the Zoot Suit riots where we're just gonna keep our heads down and business as usual. It's time for us to make a stand. And I think that parents realize that. And I think Ruben Salazar was a big part of making sure that the two communities kind of coexisted and understood each other's point of views. I think he was a big supporter of the Chicano. And,
And, and you know what? You mentioned the Zoot Suit riots right there too, which happened in the 1940s. A lot of them were around at this time. A lot of them were around there in 1970. They were older, but they were there. And they were there to witness this.
I agree, and look at the difference, right?
Mhm.
Look at the difference. It was look how many people showed up. We got 20,000 people here now, right? Remember during the Zoot Suit riots, you know, white people from LA as far as Vegas were coming to the area to help the Navy people. That
Right.
wasn't happening in 1970. The numbers changed. Things changed. The anger. All of a sudden you had a Chicano who was a little angrier.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just. I've often heard people say, especially in the Mexican community, um, if you keep your head down and keep on working and mind your business, you'll succeed. But sometimes you can't look down. You need to look up, and you need to stand up. And thank God for these young Chicanos in the 70s and late 60s because they stood up. Enough was enough, right? Enough was enough. And like I say all the time, man, we get to benefit from all of the things that they went through. We really get to benefit from that. You know what I mean? Now, our community, you just can't come into the neighborhood and do whatever you want anymore. You just can't come into a section and do it. There's things we still got to work on. We've talked about that before. That's still things but our community, at least on certain things, we will unite and we will make our presence felt. Right? Does it always go well? No. I wish all these people wouldn't have got beat up. Right? I wish all of these people wouldn't have started fighting with cops. Right? Because that takes away from the real message, and that always has people are always able to look back and say and throw salt on you, throw salt on it like psh, they want rights. Look at them, they don't even know how to act.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean? They're fighting for this, and look at they're fighting against the cops, and they're un-American. They don't want their kids to go to war, and this and that. And that was the furthest thing that the Chicano Moratorium was trying to establish. Right?
Correct.
Going. My apologies. Going back to Ruben Salazar. Ruben Salazar was there at the Chicano Moratorium. That's
Yes.
the day he died.
Yes.
Okay. Supposedly, well, I don't know if you saw on all this footage, there was a lot of tear gas being thrown around, right?
Mhm.
And they use like you ever go to a basketball game or a football game and they want to shoot something up to the fourth level and they got a gun?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what they were using something similar to that. It looked like a gun, and you could put that projectile in there and you could shoot it and all the smoke would go,
Right.
right? As the story goes, Ruben Salazar dipped into this bar. I believe it was called the Silver Dollar.
It's called the Silver Dollar. Yes. Him and a couple of people went into
Dipped
the
in there,
bar.
maybe to get a beer, maybe to get away from the crowd. Who knows?
Yeah, I hear two different things. One was to get away from the crowd, and the other one was to get a beer. I
Yeah,
don't know. There's a
who
lot of
knows?
chaos going on, so I don't know what anybody knows. But
And like I said, Ruben Salazar being a well-known figure and being, like I said, in like a sympathizer of the Chicano movement, he understood it, right? He was like people feel like he was a targeted man. Like the sheriffs knew who he was, the
yeah,
people knew who he was. He's an agitator, right? The
yeah,
FBI had files, the whole nine, right? It's just like we said, it's a different time. Sheriffs go to this bar and they shoot off those projectiles, and by some coincidence, they shot that projectile and it hit Ruben Salazar and killed him. That's the day Ruben Salazar died.
right. He was in there, and there's different reports out. There's different that they tried to get out, and that the sheriff told them, no, 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 go back inside. The sheriff shot three rounds, one of them hitting him in the head, killing him. And there's, beliefs that this was done on purpose because law enforcement knew who he was. Law enforcement knew who he was. For those that live, in the LA area or Southern Cali, he was working for Channel 34 before it was even called Univision.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, so he was a pretty big deal. I had no idea, but he was a pretty big deal, man. He was ruffling a lot of feathers in the wrong way, but for his cause, for the cause, and he was doing a pretty damn good job of it, and everybody pretty much knew who he was. So when he was shot, I think a lot of people thought that he was shot with a gun. When I heard he was shot, that's what I thought. Until
Mhm.
you told me, I was like, "Oh wait, no, he was shot with a canister, with a tear gas canister, but he was struck in the head. He dies. Investigation goes on. The sheriff who killed him was not charged,
Right.
and there was two other individuals that passed away as well. So that is where Ruben Salazar fits into all of this, and the work that he did and the reporting that he did, bringing a lot of this to light, for everybody to see, so it wouldn't be hidden some mysterious way. It kind of it's so many years later it's kind of hidden, but so it wouldn't be hidden, and it rubbed certain individuals the wrong way, law enforcement being one of them, especially back then. And it's like, no, no, stop bringing light to this. He was pretty popular, from my understanding, Robert. He was somewhat of a celebrity in the barrio,
Community
man.
loved him. From everything I've heard and everything I've ever seen, the community loved him. He was the guy, like I said, who came into your living room every night. The community loved him. And the one thing that's even, it's great to be loved, but another thing is that the community trusted him.
Mm, mm,
You got that going for you, man. It's a trip, man. But yeah, the poor guy really, he didn't nobody deserves to go out like that, and especially him, where there's suspect in how he died and if it was an accident and all that stuff. You know what I mean? It's just
right.
it's a shame. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and if anybody wants to fact check me, I believe he's on a stamp or was on a stamp.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I believe he's on a stamp. But like I said, man, a lot of people when I bring up Ruben Salazar in my classroom, when I talk to people about Ruben Salazar, he's one of those unknown heroes that people just don't know about.
Yeah. Let's
Right?
let's talk about that. Yes, Ruben Salazar died that same day, August 29th, the same day of the Chicano Moratorium. At age 42, he died. He passed away, and a year later, he was given the award that I was talking about. If I can find it right here, in 1971, Salazar was given the award, a special Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award, but he already had passed away. So, Robert, how do you teach your students about Ruben Salazar?
I try to start out with just what we were talking about, right? That we're talking about a unsung hero who you probably never heard of, who your parents probably never heard of. Especially, you know, in the Bay Area, there's you being in LA, you've never heard of him.
Right.
With the Chicanos in San Francisco and San Jose, in the other areas, they haven't heard of him as well,
Mhm.
right? So I always try to make a conscious effort to let them know that even though we might not have heard of him, doesn't mean he wasn't a significant person or he wasn't somebody who um, helped move this Chicano movement along, who helped try to move it forward, because that's what he did, right? And I try to teach them about the Chicano Moratorium. A lot of them don't understand the whole um, Vietnam War thing. Like they don't understand. What do you mean people were dying more than this and that? They don't sometimes they don't grasp that. They're like, wasn't everybody dying? It was like, why some people ask like, did other minorities or did other people throw moratoriums as well? Like were white people saying, oh, a young man had talked to me one time and was like, did white people have like a moratorium for all of their kids who were dying? Or did African Americans have a moratorium for all their kids who were dying? You know what I mean? So sometimes that's something that they're interested in. You know what I mean? Where I gotta let them recognize. I gotta recognize that a lot of people just don't know about this time period and what was going on. And like I said, the disproportionate rate was so um, obvious that people just wanted to know what was going on. Why was this happening? Make
Right,
it
right.
less than us, kind of.
Yeah. Hey, shout outs to Rudy from Chicano Ideas, man. Yeah, so there it is. KMX, which became Univision Channel 34. And there you can see the silver dollar right there
Wow.
and how they're shooting the canisters in there.
Look at people, how close those people are to them.
Right, right. Yeah,
Ah, that's
man.
ridiculous, man.
It's yeah, it was definitely crazy, man. So one of those hit him in the head and yeah, he's no longer with us. But um so that's the pretty much in a nutshell, man. The Chicano Moratorium on August 29th in 1970 in East LA, the march over 20,000 and the whole it pretty much turned into a whole melee and a whole riot and sheriffs, beating people down. Of course, there's people that have come out. You guys could go see uh different documentaries on it and of course people are coming out and saying that sheriffs were actually beating women and children as well. um there definitely is footage. I've seen footage of sheriffs hitting a girl behind her head with the nightstick. So that's it was wow, just what a piece of history, Robert.
Right, right. And I just did want to clarify Ruben Salazar was on a stamp.
Okay.
He was on
Okay.
a stamp, which is, I know that's not any justice, but
Mm.
at least there's some recognition to him. You know what I mean? Him being on a stamp, I think is pretty amazing. You know what I mean?
Yes, and the park was called Laguna Park, and they ended up changing it to Salazar Park.
Wow, that's
Um, and like I said, I had no idea. To me, it was just a park.
why. Why
Yeah,
him, right?
yeah,
Why this guy?
I
Correct.
had no idea. I had no idea, but no, now I know, man. And wow, what a piece of history. Hopefully, this can really, hit somebody,
That.
man. Hit
Sorry about
somebody
that.
in the heart. Hit somebody in the mind, and to push them forward because, like I've said before, people paid a price, man. People pay a price for us to just go ahead and do what we can do today. Don't waste your lives out there, man. Just living like mensos, man. Don't go out there, just causing havoc and everything. No, man, there was a price that was paid, so we can go ahead and have the freedoms. It wasn't back then, it wasn't like it is today. Yes, I understand people want to point out all the things that aren't right today. Nothing is ever going to be perfect, ever. But it's, I think, important to learn some of this stuff to say, hey, look, this price was paid, man. And what are you doing? Selling drugs, vandalizing, stealing, robbing, getting high with the homies? Like, come on, man. You're getting yourself locked up. Like, come on, man. This price was paid. Take advantage and head for the stars, man. Head for the stars. Robert, your thoughts? Let me see. Can we get that stamp today? That's a good question, Anthony. That's a good question. I'm not sure. You there, Robert?
I am. You know what? I'll look that up and I'll put
Yeah.
it. If I find anything, I'll put it in the in your comments tonight.
Okay, that'll be good. I'd like to see if I could get that stamp. That's a dang good question.
Yeah,
I'd like to have that stamp as
yeah.
well, man.
I'll
So,
do that tonight.
but with that, Robert, anything else, brother, that we should touch on?
Yeah, man.
Anything that we didn't touch on?
I'd just like to share. You know, you
Yeah, Robert's at school, guys. So he's a Chicano studies high school teacher.
um
So he's got a bad connection. Oh, there you go. We got you.
one last. What I was gonna say, man, is that shout out to Ruben Salazar. Shout out to all of the unsung heroes who showed up at the Chicano Moratorium to advocate for their brother, to advocate for their son, to advocate for their deal, for their cousin. You know what I mean? All those people who showed up and decided to say, you know what, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And all those people who had to take a beating, all those people who had to run from cops who were hitting innocent people, who decided, you know what, we're going to show up because there's strength in numbers. I know 20,000 people showing up. You know, the sheriffs probably looked at that and they probably didn't like that. But you know, like you said, it's no agenda. No, I'm not going to be like, yeah, well, we got to stop up because we could run everything. I'm not. We're not talking about that. I'm just saying, but there's times we really need to stand up, and this was one of those times, and we stood up and we were counted for. Right. So shout outs to all of those unsung heroes. Some lady that we're not even talking about who got hit with the billy club. Some man who got handcuffed and went to jail. You know, guys that the unsung heroes, man, of the Mexican American movement, of the Chicano movement, of just trying to move your people forward. We got to move forward, right? We have to move forward, especially in California, a state like California that's so expensive. You know, if you're not out there trying to make it happen, man, it's tough, right? But we got to move forward. You know, I don't want to get on. You know, we always say that we don't want to talk agendas and we don't want to preach. And I know sometimes I come off a little preachy, man, but you know, I just want to make sure that people know out there, man, that you know we stand on the shoulders of giants, man. We really do. There were people out there who paid the price, and we got to honor that, man. You know what I mean? We got to honor that, whether it's through hard work, whether it's through education, whether it's through some type of brotherhood, something. But we just can't can't go through the motions, man. We gotta make it happen. Anything you could do to make it happen, make it happen. Take self responsibility. Live your life to the fullest. That's all I gotta say.
I 100% agree. All right. Well, we'll be back next month with another piece of Chicano history. If you guys are interested in the videos that we've done for Chicano history, you guys can go to the playlist and you guys will see it right there. Chicano history. The first video, I believe, is the Huelga bird flag. And it's slated right there on all the videos that we've done on Chicano history. Again, we do not do this to get anybody angry or some sort of agenda. It's just education that's out there because nobody else, you don't get taught this at school for whatever reason. And Chicano history is American history, and it should be taught just like all other history. So, with that, family, as always, live your life like you're on the road. Be aware of surroundings and always keep a safe distance. Blood makes you live. Loyalty makes you family. Until next time, this is the Thecholotrucker for my good friend, Chicano high school teacher one, Mr. Robert Anthony. Over and out.